What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network, and this is your NFC North Fantasy Preview episode. Here to break it down with me, one of the top fantasy rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's going on?
What's up? I am super excited for this one. The NFC North is just absolutely loaded with fantasy potential this year. So this might be my favorite division.
Yeah, I agree. Let's jump right into it. And if you guys don't know, we're gonna go through every fantasy relevant player, everyone with an ADP on each team. So without further ado, let's jump into the Lions here. Jared Goff at QB 17. I feel like that's too low. What do you think?
Well, I mean, last year we were getting him QB 28. So
Yeah, something like
you
that.
got to pay up, but I agree, it's probably still a little too low. I think he is a legit, high end QB2, especially just offensive corner Ben Johnson staying in Detroit this season is massive. I thought he was just amazing last year, and just having continuity for Jared Goff and this offense is huge. And Goff conceded a ton of rushing touchdowns to Jamal Williams last year at 17. Even if Jamal were still there, you bank on some positive touchdown regression for the passing game. So I think Goff could easily throw 30 to 35 touchdowns this year, so you could actually improve on last year's numbers. In terms of personnel, it seems sort of like a wash. They lost TJ Hawkinson, but they drafted a talented rookie in Sam Laporta. They lost DeAndre Swift, but they drafted a talented rookie in Jahmyr Gibbs. And even though they lost Jameson Williams for the first 6 games for betting, they didn't really have him last year. So you could argue his talent might be better this year. So I just like getting him at QB 16. I think he still provides a high floor, obviously, but he has a sneaky ceiling given the sheer touchdown upside in this offense.
Yeah, almost every metric you could find, he was top 7, top 5 in QBR, top 5 in adjusted yards in attempt, top 7 in yards in attempt, top 2 in interception rate, top 2 in sack rate. And I like his schedule too. He starts the year KC, Seattle, Atlanta, only true cold weather game, week 14. And then he has a bunch of indoor road games, Minnesota, New Orleans, Dallas, a warm weather road game, Tampa Bay. They play the Packers in week 4, so it shouldn't be too bad. And of course, Goff, indoors last year, 271 yards per game and 2.2 touchdowns. Outdoors, 244 yards a game and 0.8 touchdowns with a half a yard less per attempt as well. So always like him to be indoors to maximize his value. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 9, took a big jump forward from his rookie year. His targets per route went from 22%, which is already good, to 29% last year. His yards per route went from 1.7 to 2.4. So he has arrived. Any thoughts on him going as a top 10 wideout?
Yeah, he's just about as safe as it gets. Like you mentioned, he saw a target on 29% of his routes. Also saw a 77% catch rate, which is right about what you'd expect based on his ADOT being closer to 6.5 yards. So just having those two things combined together gives you a massive floor. And we should see similar underlying usage again this year. So I think wide receiver 9 is definitely fair for Amon-Ra.
Yeah, he's just so talented. Jameson Williams, year 2, is at wide receiver 46. He barely played last year. Now he's suspended 6 games for gambling. The talent is wide receiver 46. I don't think he hits this ADP. What do you buy here?
No, I don't think he does either, because this is a rare time where, again, I don't know what the market's thinking. But like you mentioned, he's suspended for the first 6 games. Okay. So, and last year, I'm willing to forgive him for only catching 1 pass for 41 yards. It was a busted coverage last year. I could have scored a touchdown on it. But last year it was a wash because he tore his ACL in the national championship game. So we weren't expecting much, but it was concerning. We've talked about it. He just didn't do much, even when he was in the game. So while he does have the talent to become a wide receiver 2 type, as soon as this season, he's going to have to do it in 11 games. So I just don't see why you have to be treating him like a rookie. And I don't know why you'd be drafting him at the same time as a Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnson, when, they have a chance to play all 17 games. So this is one where I'm scratching my head why his ADP is in the mid 40s. I just don't get it.
Yeah, he only played more than he only jumped to and cracked 20% of the pass snaps one time last year. So like there's the fact that he's like, yes, he's going to be there for camp this time, but the fact that he's going to miss more time, it's just not ideal. I mean, this ADP is egregious. I mean,
yeah, it really is.
Like this guy could come back and still be the number 4. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that he's not even a top 3 guy if they work him in slowly. Like they just use him as like a luxury situational deep threat type of guy. Marvin Jones is here now. He signed 1 year, $3 million deal. He's the wide receiver 98 in ADP, and Josh Reynolds is the wide receiver 100. Do you think any of those guys, like especially in the first 6 weeks, pop, or they just kind of cancel each other out?
Again, they're going to provide the most value early in the season just because Jamison Williams is suspended. DJ Chark is gone, so that opens up some targets. So they could provide value then, but that's the easiest time to get value elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So that's not really a good time to be providing the most value. So I'm staying away. Once Williams returns, these guys are going to go down the pecking order.
We think.
Rookies like Gibbs and Laporta will only get better as the season goes on. It's hard to see these guys offering much value beyond week 7. And Amon-Ra is just a target monster. So there isn't much to go around. I think Jones and Reynolds, they're kind of close. So I think they'll cancel each other out. I wouldn't prefer one over the other.
Yeah, and don't forget, they're always going to find snaps for Khalif Raymond somehow. It's just got to. He's turned himself into a pretty solid, rotational guy. Laporta, let's talk about him. He's in 24. I mean, I remember when TJ Hawkinson was a rookie, pretty sure he was going above that and beat that. So, I mean, there's definitely an opening because you have Amon-Ra. I'm sure Gibbs is going to be targeted heavily when he's on the field. But outside of that, I mean, Jones is a low percentage route runner at this point in his career. Reynolds is literally the same guy at this point in his career. So there's a lot of targets, or a decent enough amount of targets, especially on an offense that O-line is good. Quarterback has been very good. Coordinator, as you mentioned, has been good. So what are your thoughts on Laporta, the second rounder out of Iowa?
Oh, I love him, and I love him here. Love the landing spot. He has like you're alluding to, he has the potential to be the number 2 target, or number 3 at worst even, in this offense. He was one of the top pass catching tight ends in this class, and he's coming from Iowa, which has been producing quality NFL tight ends lately. He took over at Iowa after TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant left, and George Kittle was before them. And I think he is similar to TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant. I think that's his range of outcomes, right? I think his ceiling is TJ Hawkinson. His floor is probably Noah Fant. And he's not really a pass blocking tight end. So the Lions took him to be a pass catching tight end. And, we were trying to figure out on the fly who the other Lions tight ends are. It doesn't matter.
I don't think and James Mitchell. And Zylstra. Shane Zylstra. Yep.
Exactly. So he doesn't have much competition. So I think week 1, and from the sound of things, it does sound like he's going to be the week 1 starter. Yep. So I think he's a no-brainer at tight end 24. I think you're getting a ton of upside. I think Dalton Kincaid clearly has more upside because, the Bills are talking about lining him up in the slot, literally as a wide receiver. I don't think that's going to be Laporta. I think he'll be more of a Hawkinson type of pass catching tight end. So ton of upside at tight end 24. Give me all of the Laporta there.
Yeah, I like him as well. I think he could smash this ADP just because, again, I think they, like you said, they drafted him to play, and there's a spot available for a pass catcher in this offense. Yep. And he's his 40. He ran under 4.6, so he was in the top 10 percentile among tight ends. And I actually have the numbers in front of me. So in 2022 at Iowa, he played slot 30%, wide 21%. So he played more as like a wide receiver than he did in line. So he actually could be like that move, like that true move tight end. So I think the upside is through the roof for him, and the athletic numbers are where they need to be.
Yeah.
Everything really is where it needs to be. So yeah, this guy's like a scream, and he's 22. He's not old, so it's a young rookie. Yeah, this just everything just kind of screams sleeper with Laporta. So yeah, if I can't get like a Chigo Conco, and I'm just like just kind of need a tight end, I'm definitely Laporta at 24. That could be a major steal. At 24 is no real downside either. Okay, let's go to the backfield, and this is where it gets interesting. Jahmyr Gibbs, 12th overall pick, Bama, 5'9", about 200 soaking wet, but the dude flies.
Yep.
He just flies. So, the 40 was 4.36 seconds. How do we and then let me also preface it with this. We talked about this on the NFC East pod. DeAndre Swift, as like part of a 3-way committee, still finished as a top 20 running back. So with that being said, is RB15 right for Gibbs? Is that still too high, or what are you thinking?
It's probably a tad high, and I'll get to why later, but damn the market for being sharp again. I think like if he was like RB 18, 19, that, oh my God, yeah, I would fire him up there. 15 is a bit rich, but the Lions took him in the first round to be the feature back. He's clearly going to dominate the passing down work. He reminds me of Alvin Kamara as a pass catcher, but like you said, he's 200 pounds soaking wet. I don't know if he's going to be able to be a goal line back like Alvin Kamara. So I think that's going to be David Montgomery's role. And that's Jamal Williams' 17 touchdowns role. So that does cap Gibbs' upside. But like you said, DeAndre Swift, the coaches kind of didn't like him. They phased him out, and he was still RB20 in points per game last year. That's going to be Gibbs' role plus more. So, RB15 is a fair ADP. It's hard to take him earlier than that, but I just don't know if you're getting much value just because the goal line touches aren't going to be there. That's my only issue with him. Everything else is amazing. Like, he could catch 4 to 5 passes a game. He could, dominate with just 10 to 15 touches. So again, he's tricky just because his ADP is so expensive, but it probably should be.
Yeah, I agree. I think he probably should be more like the high teens, just because I still think there's guys like, again, I go back to a guy like Joe Mixon, who I still think is getting 15 plus carries. I just think they're a little bit higher floors, whereas Gibbs, you are going to bank on that kind of DeAndre Swift efficiency, and then hope that the touchdowns come from, big plays to kind of, get you there. So a little bit of risk, obviously, but still a fun player to own. I wouldn't exactly, I wouldn't say, if you pick him there, like it's a terrible pick. But there's a lot of running backs in that RB2 range. And Montgomery is one of them at RB27, who pretty interesting. Pretty good contract for a back, 3 years, 18 mil with 11 mil guaranteed, and pretty much ticketed for that 22 Jamal Williams role, which was about just over 15 carries a game when Swift was healthy. Now only just under 7 routes per game. So maybe, we'll see if that increases for Montgomery, maybe not. But the key was, as you alluded to, an NFL high 45 carries for Williams last year inside the opponent's 10-yard line. That was 16 more than the number 2 player in that category. He had 8 more carries inside the 5 than anyone else in the National Football League. So, and we expect this offense to be just as good as, if not better, than last year. So I have no problem buying David Montgomery at RB27. It's going to clearly be the best offensive line he's ever had in his career as well.
Yeah, that's true. And, the Lions drafting Gibbs was obviously a huge blow to his value, but they traded away DeAndre Swift, so that kind of helped. But his path to fantasy value will be the goal line touches, and I think he will be getting those. So he has, potential 10+ touchdown upside. But he also offers, some actual pass catching upside, which Jamal didn't have that. So even when Gibbs is healthy, I think Monty can provide RB3 flex value, which is kind of where he's being drafted. But if Gibbs were to ever miss time, where would you be ranking Montgomery? Like low end RB1?
Yeah, absolutely.
Potential top 10. So this is the sweet spot where I think that he could meet ADP even if Gibbs stays healthy all 17 games, and any missed games, he's going to be providing RB1 value. So I think he is sneaky here. And he's the type of player, his ADP might actually drop outside the top 30. I mean, the hype around Gibbs is only going to get better and bigger when we see footage of him. So I think Monty's ADP could dip going forward. So I like him now, but I might like him even more later in the best ball season when it drops potentially outside the top 30.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Montgomery. The Lions a season ago, no running back group collectively scored more fantasy points than the Detroit Lions. They had 427 running back carries. They had nearly 2,000 yards, another 82 through the. So like, there's enough there for Gibbs and Monty. Because remember, last year, because Deuce Staley the running back coach had beef with DeAndre Swift, many times it devolved into a three-way committee, like straight up three-way committee. And it doesn't necessarily have to do that this year, because now you're just looking at, you have Reynolds there, and you have who's the young guy, Muhammad Ibrahim, who's like a old rookie. So I don't think he's going to be like factoring in much. And Reynolds is now in year 5 and has zero guaranteed money, so they could cut him. So yeah, I think it's these two guys, and have no problem with it. I think Montgomery's probably better value than Gibbs just because he's going a little lower and has that 17 touchdown upside.
Yep.
Okay, so to recap, Lions, who do we like? Sleepers, we got
Sam Laporta for sure. I think he's the no-brainer sleeper. And then, David Montgomery. I think just talking about him, I got more excited about him. But I think he offers a ton of upside as ADP.
Love it. Yeah, I'm going Goff, and I think Goff is gonna have another great year. And Laporta, I kind of agree with Montgomery. I think he's a little closer to, like, both of the running backs are probably a little closer to proper. But yeah, I do agree. I mean, Montgomery does have that Jamal Williams 17-20 touchdown upside. Seems like, and they paid for him too, so that's always a good sign. And then busts, we got
just based on ADP, it's got to be Jameson Williams. I mean, love the talent. He could provide wide receiver 2 value when he does return, but that's not going to be till week 7. So I don't get his ADP. That's the only reason I don't like him is his ADP is way too high.
Yeah, I thought there wasn't a guy whose ADP I was going to disagree with more than Brian Robinson Jr. But I found him. It's Jameson Williams. Yeah. Love the talent, but like a lot of times it's like, I like to look at it like this. It's like sometimes we're just a year too soon on a lot of these guys, and like in some cases that doesn't hurt. You're looking for upside. You could think ahead. That's kind of what you're supposed to be doing here in fantasy. But I feel like a lot of times with some of these young guys, like we get way too ahead of ourselves when it's like the truth is these teams have kind of a plan for these guys, and I just think with the coming off the injury last year and now missing another 6 games this year, and just looking at the usage, even when he came back last year, I still think that he's probably a year away from being a guy we can rely on.
And the beauty of investing in Jared Goff, which you are, is you kind of get Jameson Williams week 7 on at a cheaper price. So, I mean, Jameson will certainly help unlock Goff's ceiling. So you're already kind of getting him through Goff, but at this ADP, no way.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure Sam Laporta is going to score more fantasy points than him at a more valuable position at that point in the draft, because they're like you can get a dime a dozen wide receivers. There's only so many tight ends that can actually potentially provide startable value.
Yep.
Down there. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings. We got Kirk Cousins clocking in at QB 11. I'm still a little skeptical on him. I feel like I know what Kirk Cousins is, and I don't know if he has the ups. I don't know if he's going to get better than last year. Like that's just my thing with him, because last year they had this defensive coordinator who I'm sure a lot of Vikings fans would agree the scheme was just too simplistic, and it caused their defense to be very, very bad. And so the Vikings got in these crazy shootouts a few times where Cousins had to throw for like 400 yards. And now they have Brian Flores, so I think that should improve. Although they are like selling everybody on their defense. But I'm just a little concerned because I like Cousins had 3 top 5 finishes last year. They all came against bad defenses. In all the other games, And the three, and take away those 3 top 5 finishes, his average rank was 16th, QB 16. That is not good for a guy you're drafting at QB 11. And then he starts the year with 3 pretty good pass defenses. Tampa Bay, who still has still above average. Philly, very good. And the Chargers, a healthy Charger team, also very good. So I don't see the point in redraft because he's in that streamer range where you'd rather just get a guy who'd start week 1. In best ball, I still think he's a little overvalued at 11 because the booms might not be there with Flores. And then he also got pretty lucky. I mean, Justin Jefferson has never missed a game. Adam Thielen's gone, and yes, Thielen was slowing down, but he's still responsible for over 30% of Cousins' touchdowns the last 3 years. Ken, Addison, or Osborne, Hawkins, can that combination pick that up? That remains to be seen. And here's another nugget that it kind of caught me by surprise. The Vikings were, this is according to reports, the Vikings were reportedly targeting Bryce Young, a trade up for Bryce Young. That kind of makes me wonder. So I'm probably more down on Kirk Cousins than most people. I feel like most people are just like, he is what he is. He has Jefferson, fine. I'm going to draft him at QB 11. I'm not really getting. I'd much rather have Jared Goff. I think it's the same floor ceiling. But what do you think? Am I too hard? Am I being too harsh on him?
Yeah, he deserves it.
You can say
I hate the talent, but I love the situation. Let me put it that way. But I think you're right. I think QB7 last year seems like his ceiling. I think getting rid of the aging Adam Thielen and replacing him with Jordan Addison is an upgrade. And a full season with TJ Hawkinson. I mean, come on, that's going to be massive. And he has the best receiver in all of football in Justin Jefferson. So I love the situation. I think you hit on it, though. I think redraft leagues that start 1 quarterback, I'm passing on him. Again, it's way easier to just stream. You said he starts the season off with the tough schedule. That's not the guy that you draft at QB 11. But if you're talking 2 QB leagues, I like him more than that. He does have a good floor ceiling combo and best ball stacks. I mean, stacking him with Jefferson, Hawkinson, Addison, I think makes a ton of sense. So I think it depends on what league you're in, if QB 11 makes sense. But I think you're right. I think in redraft leagues, that's the league to kind of fade him at QB 11.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of ties my hands just because in best ball, I'm usually going for like a higher upside quarterback, or I'm just going to wait for like a free Jared Goff or a free, somebody like even lower, like if my QB2, like I'm just going to get someone who I think is going to start a bunch of games like Jordan Love or somebody like that. So I'm just not really in the range. Like even I'm like, might as well just like Matthew Stafford could beat Kirk Cousins. Matthew Stafford's going at QB 20 this year. Like Matthew Stafford has the same situation as Cousins had last year. Good, decent supporting cast, but terrible defense. Like I much rather try to just get the value a bunch of rounds later. But Justin Jefferson is wide receiver 1. He should probably be wide receiver 0.5. He's just that good. I don't have any much to say about
First overall, right?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, he's the top receiver.
Yeah. We
first
are
overall over everybody.
Yeah. Remember when he like single-handedly had the most miraculous catch of all time last year? Yeah. I think he's earned that. The numbers back it up. Although interestingly enough, so we in the AFC pod, we talked about Jamar Chase and how he never finished below, I think it was wide receiver 44, something like that. Yeah. Jefferson did have, he was top 6 in just over half of his games, 9 out of 17. And then 3 more in the top 22, but he was 47th or below 5 times. So a little bit boomer bust, but the booms are just so high that I don't really mind it.
Was the bust the Jair Alexander game?
One of them. Yeah.
One of them. But, and he only got 1 catch. So
yeah.
I mean, if teams just really sell out to slow him down, maybe they do, but that could be a blip on the radar. I wouldn't say he has a low floor, but I know what you're saying.
No, I'm just just pointing it out. I think it's
potential.
People should know. But Addison, Addison is the guy. He's the linchpin here. Like, is he?
Yeah.
Because wide receiver 43, another one of these things where I feel like the market is like almost leaving us no room for error now. Like he has to hit. Another one of these USC receivers, 5'11", 173, 4.4940, pretty good route runner, quick game, screen game kind of guy. Lacks some strength, physicality. did struggle with some drops, but can he pick up those stealing targets and be more efficient in year one?
Yeah, I think so. And he's one of my favorite receivers in the 40 to 50 range. There's really no weakness to his game. He can line up inside, outside, slot. You can win downfield. He's a bit smaller, which is why he's getting compared to Devonta Smith, but that really hasn't been an issue for Smith, thankfully. And the Vikings probably took him in the first to become their number 2 receiver with Thielen gone. So I think he's going to be able to take advantage of defenses having to worry about Justin Jefferson. I think Addison's like the perfect wide receiver too. I don't think he'll ever be a true number 1 alpha. He's kind of like a Manuel Sanders, Robert Woods type, where I think he'll thrive in this role. So I think it makes sense to stack him with Cousins, because if he hits, Cousins is probably finishing, closer to his ceiling. So I just love Addison in this range. I think this is the time to I don't think he has a low floor necessarily, but I think he does have a pretty high ceiling in this offense.
See him having a low floor just because we haven't, what is he, like a $170, $175? I mean, that,
yeah, around there.
Yeah, I think and then like a 31st percentile catch radius according to a player profile. Like, there are some things I love his route running, and but he could be a little bit more, especially in year one, of like a gadget, like screen, like a Rondale Moore, I guess, if that makes sense, where he could have like some like 9-10 catch games, but he could also go he could disappear at certain times, kind of like Thielen did, but for different reasons. But overall, I'm not, I don't know how to call him. I don't know how to say I like his value, because like at 43, I just don't see a ton of room for error. Right. But what about Osborne? He's going 59, so like that's actually not as low as you would think. I mean, his targets per route went down last year from 14.7 2 years ago to 14.3. His yards per route went from 1.3 to 1.1. His yards per catch went down over 2, and his touchdowns per catch, which was a big thing, it was due to regress, but 14% 2 years ago, just over 8% last year. So that's kind of concerning to me that, even with Thielen kind of dipping, and, Osborne wasn't really to take a stranglehold. So that's more of I think a positive for a guy like Addison. I don't think Osborne's going to jump in here. So like at 59, what are you doing with him? Like, do you think there's enough upside for him to maybe start the year as that number 2, or do you think it's more downside of him like just getting completely usurped by Addison?
Yeah, I don't think he'll get completely usurped, because they use a ton of 11 personnel. I mean, they're designed after the Rams offense. So I think that this is a fair price for him. And he does carry some upside. Over the last 5 games last year, he was the wide receiver 7.
That's because the Vikings got down like 53 points to the Colts, and the Colts, they just played zone defense and let the Vikings just completely.
That could happen again. I'm not saying he's a high upside guy, but he could have flashes. Like, I don't want him in redraft and trying to figure out when the hell he's going to do good. But like in best ball, sure, I'll take some flyers here. I'm not completely fading him. And normally I'm a huge KJ Osborne fan the past couple of years, but this year I think I am going to slow down. I think 59 is pretty high. Like you said, like, I'm shocked it's not in the 70s. So I just think his ADP is about where it should be. So I don't think you should fade or target him necessarily. I think that Addison, where he's going, that's just where I like to take some gambles. So I know there is some risk to Addison, but I think he's more likely to pay it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think this podcast a couple years ago, we talked about KJ Osborne when he was like a 3rd string on the depth chart. Like, this guy might actually start. I don't love Osborne's underlying metrics, but I do agree. I think in best ball there could be some upside there, because you are dealing with a rookie in that other spot, and who's going a lot higher. So like, this is an offense where you have Hawkinson and you have Jefferson, but those guys have been pretty healthy. Well, Hawkinson just got here, but he played in all the games. Jefferson's never missed games. So like, there's no one really behind
that's what Osborne
either. So like, not only does he have upside to like be the number 2 if something goes wrong with Addison, but like Jalen Reagor, Jalen Naylor, Brandon Powell, like those guys aren't really a big threat to overtake Osborne either.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Who's going to take away snaps? Jalen Reagor? Hell no.
Yeah.
Nobody. So, I mean, he's a lock in 11 personnel. So
Josh Oliver.
Josh Oliver,
They'll just go to
wow.
2 tight end sets. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they probably will. They did pay a pretty penny for Oliver, actually. Yeah, so Hawkinson's here. He's the tight end 3 this year. He was the tight end 3 from week 9 on with Minnesota, and only 2 games of his 10 with Minnesota was he outside the top 16. He had half of his games he was in the top 7. What is tight end 3 too rich, or do you think that's about where he's supposed to be going?
No, tight end 3 is fair. You know, having a full off season to learn the offense, gain chemistry with Cousins. I mean, he already, kicked ass with them last year, but he's going to be even better this year. I would lean him over George Kittle at 3 just because we don't know who the hell is going to be the 49ers quarterback. So if we get clarity that Brock Purdy's like ready to go and he's going to be the quarterback, maybe I would consider Kittle over him, but that's just probably not going to happen. So just give me Hawkinson at 3.
Yeah, I have a few shares of Hawkinson already. I just think the volume potential there is pretty high behind Jefferson. I think he's definitely going to be the number 2 target. Maybe Addison will overtake him at some point, but he's definitely starting the year number 2, and he's been targeted over 20% of his routes. So, like Hawkinson. So the running backs, I mean, we've been talking about this. Alexander Mattison, he's going RB30. Dalvin Cook was going about 15 spots higher. Dalvin Cook's no longer on the team. Madison started about 6 games over the past 3 years, averaged just over 23 touches for 112 scrimmage yards, 5 touchdowns in those 6 starts. So where do you think he ends up? I guess is a good question. In ADP wise, where do you think he should end up?
Well, right now it looks like the recent drafts he's sort of in the RB15 range, which I think makes sense. That's where I would rank him, like a high-end RB2, maybe not in the RB1 range. Like when he's filled in for Cook in the past, he has been there, but I think long-term he'll settle in high-end RB2. So I think RB15 is about fair, but it just goes to show how criminal it was that you were able to get him RB30 to RB35 just a couple weeks ago, when we've known for over a month now that Dalvin was gone. So that was the time to just load up on Madison, and I'm afraid that's gone. The market has finally adjusted with Cook officially being released. So I think RB15 sounds about fair, and that's where he's going in recent drafts.
And we know Minnesota's not going to sign another running back. Their cap situation is crazy. So any thoughts on who the handcuff will be? I know they got Dwayne McBride there, who is a rookie. They also got Wangu coming back, who is like the returner, and Ty Chandler, a guy they drafted last year as well. So it looks like McBride is the only one with the ADP. He's going RB70. And just any thoughts on that? You think that's just kind of like an open competition right now?
No, this is something I think is worth figuring out. I don't know the answer yet. I can't plant my flag on either, but it's between Dwayne McBride and Ty Chandler. McBride's the safer bet. He seems like the Alexander Madison replacement. Like he's an early down back. He went in the 7th round just due to missing the combine. He had a hamstring injury. Probably should have gone sooner, but he's just an early down grinder. I don't think he's going to do much in the passing game. So he would probably need Madison to miss time to have any value whatsoever. The wild card is definitely Ty Chandler. He is super fast. He's already 25 years old. But he has the Dalvin Cook. He's not as good as Dalvin Cook, but the upside to be like the Dalvin Cook role. So he can mix in on passing downs when Madison is healthy. And I think if Madison were to go down, he probably has the most upside to be just a true workhorse back, but he has the wider range of outcomes. I think he's less polished than McBride, just as a running back overall. So right now, if Ty Chandler is free, I'd be taking some swings at him. But I think McBride has the best chance to be Madison's true backup, if that makes sense.
And you don't think you think Wangu just kind of stays special teams? Because Wangu played over Chandler last year when they were both active.
I think that Wangu, he's more of the special teamer. We'll have to see some progress. Again, this is something that I think just going to have to sort out through camp, potentially preseason. But I think Chandler has the most upside, the clearest path to upside, whereas McBride's a safer bet. Nwangu, I think, is the dark horse wild card,
Yeah.
where I wouldn't put him in the mix yet, but I wouldn't be shocked. Anything can happen with these three guys. But either way, I think it is worth paying attention to because we kind of want Alexander Madison's backup, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So this is a situation where every day we might find a nugget, and this is something that we got to monitor closely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sleeping on Wangu. I mean, I know he never really took off in terms of a runner, but he did play over Chandler, and he's been one of the best returners in the game for 2 years now. He's got 3 touchdowns on just 53 kick returns, and he averages 28.3. And now, with the kick return being less of a factor, maybe he has, and he is 6'1", he's listed at 6'1", 210. So like I think he's squarely in the running as well.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a ton of upside. I have him on a dynasty team, so I hope he pans out. I'm just not banking on it, but again, this is a three.
This is where we unearth these guys, though. This is where we found it. We talked ourselves into KJ Osborne a couple years ago. I'm telling you, this is Wangu guy. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, no, he could hit. I just think it makes sense for McBride to have the highest or the lowest ADP right now, just because he's the safer pick. But again, I think taking flyers on Chandler and Nwangu do make sense this time in Vera anyway.
Okay. Who do we like sleepers for the Vikings?
I'm going with Jordan Addison. Just love his upside. Where he's going, obviously, he probably does have to pan out, but I think he has a high floor. They didn't draft him in the first round to just kind of sit there. And like we mentioned, there's really no competition in the top 3. So he's playing no matter what. Love his potential. And then we don't know which one of these 3 backup running backs, but I think one of them. And again, if you make a time machine and go back a couple weeks, you should have been drafting Madison heavily when he was RB30. So he was my favorite sleeper. But now that the news with Dalvin Cook being officially cut, he unfortunately, he's no longer my top sleeper overall.
Yeah, now, a lot of the value is kind of been out. I still think he's a pretty high floor play because, I mean, we can't even figure out who his backup is, which is probably a good sign for him. And it wasn't like, it's like the Vikings are kind of being forced into this. So, they're the fact that they didn't really use anyone last year and it was just all Cook and Madison, that kind of bodes well for Madison now. It's like it could probably be, almost all Madison with one other guy. It was like a 75-25 split last year. So still like Madison, but not, there's RB30 obviously much more value than at RB15. What about overvalued guys or busts?
No one. I think everybody's either on par or a value in this offense. Even KJ Osborne, who I'm probably drafting the least, I still have, slightly higher in my rankings just based on the high floor. So this is a team I'm just gonna have to say no one's really a bust candidate.
And for me, it's just Cousins, just because I see I don't like the schedule. I think, and I just think with the better defense, it could just be a lot more middling, and you could kind of he's just replaceable, I think, and he's going pretty high. All right, let's go to the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields up to QB6. Matt Eberflus said they're going to focus on the passing game a lot more of an emphasis on throwing, kind of the Hurts, Josh Allen models for improvement. And I mean, you do have that potential because you went out and you got DJ Moore. So here's another one of those things where you look at Justin Fields, over 40% of his targets last year went to Equinemius St. Brown, Dante Pettis, Byron Pringle, Velus Jones, N'Keal Harry, Emir Smith-Marset, backup tight ends, David Montgomery, Treston Ebner, like just guys that, not ideal. So now you should have more. Mooney's coming. Mooney missed time. Claypool barely got any packages, and then got hurt as well. So, what are your thoughts on Fields?
Oh, love him. I mean, he finishes the QB6 last year. He was QB5 in points per game, and that was just despite having one of the worst pass catching groups in the league. Like you mentioned, Darnell Mooney also missed a handful of games. So the fact that they just bring in DJ Moore. They'll have Chase Claypool for the entire offseason program. Hopefully they can integrate him a little bit better. Mooney's back healthy. QB6 seems fair, but he has top 3 upside. So he is similar to Jalen Hurts last year, just in terms of upside, where QB6 might be his floor.
Yeah.
So I do love him. And we were kind of cautioning last year just with the supporting cast. It was hard and like him too much, but he was still too cheap. This year, I think the sky's the limit with him. So, yeah, like if he's still there at QB6, I'm taking him.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. I think QB6 is floor, and I think this guy has QB1 overall upside.
Oh, absolutely.
In his range of outcomes. And it was like Jalen Hurts last year. Like he started out as like a QB, like in the low, like maybe like 8, not 10, 9, 8. He kept creeping up, but even at like 6, it was still like, okay, this guy's still a value. And what did he do? Go on to be, a top 2 quarterback. And I think Fields could do the same thing. I mean, here's the crazy stat with Fields. Fields ran the ball 3 times fewer than Jalen Hurts last year and had 380 more rushing yards. Like his rushing upside is bonkers. And even if he throws more, like just the explosiveness on the ground is probably even greater than Hurts. And now the supporting cast, Cole Kmet really came on last year. If Claypool ever gets healthy, you have a great top 3 at wide receiver. So yeah, I really like Fields. I think he's a value, not in the sense like QB6 is probably fair in terms of the quarterbacks, but going in the early 5th round, I'd probably take him a round or 2 higher. Like I think he could legit be the top scoring player in fantasy this year.
Yep, agree completely.
So DJ Moore's wide receiver 22 comes from Carolina as part of the compensation for Chicago's first overall pick. Any thoughts on him kind of moving from what ended up being a disaster of a year for most of the year in Carolina over here to Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question he's going to make this offense better and Justin Fields better. He's why I like Justin Fields at QB6, but wide receiver 22 is still just a bit high. He should still see a high target share, but he's not going to the Kansas City Chiefs. So the overall volume, might be lacking, and he still has, pretty low touchdown upside. So I'm not thrilled about taking him at wide receiver 22. I think just the way to invest in him is to just take Justin Fields. I think that's, he's going to help Justin Fields. I don't know if it's going to go the other way. So I think wide receiver 22 is just a little bit high for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I think it's going to be I think Justin Fields is going to make like an improvement, the way we've seen Allen and Hurts do it. And, the fact that this guy was, part of the reason they're fine with trading that number 1 pick. Like, I think he's going to get his. Like, there were points in the year in the offseason where he was going inside the top 20. I think that was starting to get a little presumptive, a little rich. But if he's going in those mid-20s, I'm fine with taking a shot on him because I still think he actually does have, wide receiver 1 upside, and he could be a massive target hog. Because like the supporting cast is a lot better, but like Kmet's, he started getting a lot more targets when Mooney went down. Mooney regressed in terms of his targets per route, went from 22 to 19% last year. So I think Moore is going to be still has that like target hog potential. And I do think there's going to be more pass volume this year now with a full offseason in this offense with added weapons. So I'm willing to take some shots on him. Like I'm not going to be overexposed, but I'm fine with being like on par. Mooney is 52, wide receiver 52. As I mentioned, he saw some dips in his underlying metrics. His targets per route went down about 3%. His yards per route dipped a bit as well. And, it hurt his counting stats. He went from 62 yards per game to about 41. So now he's coming back off the injury. There's a new number 1 in town. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, he probably wasn't meant to be a true number 1 wide receiver, for being honest. So maybe having a player like DJ Moore will help take away some of the attention, lead to more, open looks downfield. So it could help him in best ball only. I don't think I'd want Mooney in redraft trying to figure out when he's going to have a good game. So he's not a player I'm looking to target in this range. But if he falls outside of the top 55 in best ball, I think it does make sense to have some Fields, Mooney stacks.
Yeah, I think he'll go back to being more of, intermediate to deep route runner. So with that comes, some inconsistency, but Claypool's still been struggling to get on the field from what I'm seeing. He's still dealing with some type of injury. They apparently want him to be like a vertical red zone guy. They only gave him a handful of plays last year because he kind of came mid-season, but he's wide receiver 72 right now. But I feel like if he was healthy, maybe he would have the upside. Still pretty young, but as far as I don't know what to do with him. What are you doing with him?
Yeah, well, it's not good that he's hurt because he really struggled to pick up the offense after the trade. They were struggling to figure out how to integrate him. So having a full offseason to learn the playbook and get chemistry with Fields was key. So if he's hurt, that does hurt. So I do think he has, some upside as a talent, but just in this offense, I think it's going to be limited. I think it's going to go through DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and then Mooney will be, the high variance downfield guys. So Claypool's going to maybe catch, 5 touchdowns. So I just don't see the appeal even in the 70s to really target Claypool. I think he'll need 1 or 2 injuries to these pass catchers to potentially offer value. So he's just not a guy that I'm too interested in investing in.
Yeah, the fact that his offseason has still been compromised is not a good sign. I mean, that's probably good news for Mooney, because I think that, if Claypool was also firing on all cylinders, that would make Mooney even more inconsistent. But now Mooney could still be at least somewhat involved, on a week-to-week basis. Kmet is the tight end 13. He was a tight end 4 from week 9 on. With Mooney in the lineup, his targets per route was 14%, and his yards per route was about 1.2. And then once Mooney got hurt, that jumped from 14% to 20% targets per route, and the yards per route went from 1.2 to 1.5. So a lot of Kmet, kind of pop off did come with Mooney out. But there's also just not that many tight ends to kind of choose from once you get outside that top 12 or so. So I don't know. What do you think of Kmet at 13?
Yeah, it's tricky because, he talented tight end. He's coming off a breakout season. He was the tight end 7 last year, but he only saw a target on 16% of his routes. But he made up for that by just running a shit ton of routes. He averaged an 85% routes run rate, which, if you're investing in a low end tight end 1 or high end tight end 2, is amazing. But he just didn't have much competition for targets. So having a guy like DJ Moore there, Darnell Mooney back, will cut into his target share. So that's going to sting. Plus he caught 7 touchdowns last year, 41% of Justin Fields' touchdowns. So he should see more competition for touchdowns. So I think, he's just due to regress in some of those areas. That's why we liked him last year. So tight end 12, 13 does seem a bit high. I don't know if he provides as high of a ceiling as like a Chig Okonkwo or even a Dulcich. I even like Dulcich over him right now. So I think if you were to follow like tight end 15, like Tyler Higbee, I would take him probably tight end 15. So I just think in that tight end 12, tight end 13 range, there's other guys on the board I'd rather have.
Yeah, he's going a couple spots too high. It starts to get ugly quick after that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, the fact that we saw, most of his, he had some like good touchdown luck before Mooney went down, but in terms of like the more predictive, stickier metrics like targets per route, the fact that really spiked when Mooney was out, and not only do you have Mooney back, but you also have DJ Moore here. The consistency I think is not going to be there. So in best ball, as your tight end 2, fine. But in redraft, it's going to be tough. Tunyon is here now too. He got about just over $1 million guaranteed. Tight end 40. That's interesting. I feel like there's probably better guys you could take there. He's before the injury, it was, his 8 out was almost 10, and he averaged almost 12 yards, about 11 and a half yards a catch. And then after the injuries, 8 out went down to 6, and he averaged 9 yards a catch. So I don't know if he bounces back. I mean, he never was like a top prospect, former wide receiver, but like, I don't think he hits tight end 40. I don't see why you would draft him. Honestly.
Absolutely no reason. You got K. Dotton, Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
Like flyer on Noah Gray at tight end 49 if Kelsey were to miss time. There's just better flyers there than Tunyon.
What about this backfield? You got Herbert at RB 35. Foreman got signed for 1 year, $2 million with another $1 million incentives and $1 million guaranteed. And then Rashawn Johnson is a 4th rounder out of Texas. And I should also mention Travis Homer got a $1.75 million guaranteed, so he's making the team. So that just take that for what it will. But Travis Homer is going to make this team. So what do you think of this backfield?
Ooh, yeah, this is a mess. But I kind of like Khalil Herbert in the RB 35 range. You know, you can get him a discount because he's fairly priced, because it does look like it could be a 2 to 3 way committee with Foreman and Johnson. Luke Getzky, the offensive coordinator, has even hinted at that, so it's not like a surprise. But I love Herbert's talent. He was 2nd out of 59 running backs in my expected yards per carry model last year. Just every metric you look at, like he's a legit back. Anytime Montgomery has missed time the past couple of seasons, I mean, Herbert's been like a legit RB1, RB2 kind of producer. So in this range, you typically have running backs that kind of need a injury to provide value anyway. So Herbert does have a path where he's the workhorse back without any injury. So I think he has that sneaky upside in this range. Now there is some downside, because, you know, like a Deontay Foreman could handle more early down work than I'm expecting. Roshan Johnson is a really good prospect out of the 4th round. I mean, he didn't produce much in college because he was backing up Bijan Robinson, but he's very talented, doesn't have much tread on his tires. You know, he's a really good pass blocker. So I think he could see passing down snaps early as a rookie, but that's not really the role that we're looking for on the Bears. So I think Herbert's the most likely back to be just an explosive early down runner, and why I still think he's offering some value at the RB 35 slot.
Yeah, with Monty and Herbert last year, Monty was RB 24, and then Herbert was around RB 40. So like they could have 2 top 40 guys. So you know, Herbert's 35, Foreman 45, Johnson 50. One of these guys is going to be a bust. We don't know which. And the reason I mentioned Homer is because he actually may take a lot of like the hurt me up, pass down snaps, because he got more guaranteed money than Foreman. So almost double actually. So, but the thing, this might be a case where Johnson's just still a year away, because if Homer starts the year as the passing down guy, and then Herbert was very good last year, and Foreman was also very good last year. So, you know, we'll have to monitor that, but I think it'll probably be Herbert and then either Foreman or Johnson as the guy who gets that, you know, is the 1B, and then Homer will be, you know, special teams and maybe the occasional, you know, hurry up 2-minute drill type of situation. But as of right now, yeah, I agree. I think Herbert is the safest play, and then we just have to kind of monitor Foreman and Johnson. But right now, I mean, Johnson's probably the bit overvalued just because, you know, I think he's still 3rd on the depth chart. He's still a day 3 pick, and you still have Homer, who could, you know, if passing snaps is his calling card, I mean, still have Homer there too, even though Johnson's a bigger guy. But yeah, so that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Okay, so who do you like undervalued guy sleepers on the Bears?
Khalil Herbert, because obviously there's some risk. He might not be the week 1 starter, but that's every running back in this range, really. But he's the rare back in this range that could be the week 1 starter. He doesn't really need an injury to hit value. So that's why I think RB 35 seems like a fair price, but I think he's still sneaky there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think like it's tough. Like I was a little high. I think he was like in the RB 40 range. I was a little higher. Now I think he's like fairly valued, but I see your point. Like, especially with Monty, you know, going as RB 24, and you still had Herbert, you know, kind of in that top 40. Herbert's probably not going to be the odd man out, even if it's probably going to be one of the 2 other guys. So I definitely take your point. For me, it's actually Justin Fields, even though he's going at QB6. Like, I just think the overall, you know, going around, you know, 40, you know, like just around the end of the 4th round, beginning of the 5th. I actually think he should be going a little bit higher than that, because again, I think he could score the most points of any player in fantasy this year. And we're kind of just, you know, he's kind of just in that middling QB range. But if we've learned anything from Hurts and Allen over these years, is that when you have this rushing upside, doesn't take much, just a little bit of an increase in efficiency or volume will get you there. So I like Fields a lot. What about Bust?
No one really, because I think there's a ton of potential in this team, but DJ Moore, I don't love him at wide receiver 22, but you kind of mentioned if he falls to like wide receiver 25, I'll take him. I would definitely stack him with Justin Fields. So while I'm a little bit lower on Moore, I don't think he's a potential bust. I think you could find a lot of value in this offense right now.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely Tunyon. I don't think he hits that tight end 40, but I will also say one of the two of Foreman or Johnson is probably busted. Right now, I would lean Johnson, but this is just, there's no way to know until, there's just going to be a battle. They've said that. So we just have to monitor it. All right, let's finish up with the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, QB 23. And I think the thing that sticks out to me about Love is not just that Love is inexperienced in terms of starts. He still got fewer than 100 attempts, but this may be one of the least experienced, youngest receiving cores that we've ever seen either. I mean, you got Christian Watson and Dobbs are year 2 guys, and those are like the veterans here. And then both, now you got Musgrave and Kraft, the 2 rookies at tight end. Jaden Reed's another rookie at wide receiver that may end up starting. I mean, this is just a really young pass catching course. So what do you think of the passing game for Green Bay this year?
Yeah, now it's hard. He's such an unknown heading into year 3. He was a first round pick, but he's only made the one start. But I've watched him. He's played a ton in preseason, and he's okay. He has some rushing upside, but I think it's what you said. Just the surrounding talent is lacking. And I love Christian Watson. I mean, he really flashes a rookie, but if he were to ever miss time, like that's going to be just such a massive blow to Love. And, Watson, he was dealing with a ton of soft tissue injuries. He plays with reckless abandon. So he seems like a permanent injury risk, just the way he plays. So I would be very worried if Watson's ever out of the lineup. So that's kind of why I'm staying away, because I just don't see who else could step up. So, the ADP around wide receiver 23, it seems fair, but I just think there's too much downside here to be taking Love, because just like I said, he's such an unknown.
Yeah, I think in best ball it makes sense because I don't think he gets benched. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
he's not getting
benched. If you could get him free, I think Clifford is behind him. So I think you can Danny Etling.
And stack him with Watson for sure.
Oh yeah. Because Watson's going around wide receiver 27 over the past 4 weeks. I think that's a pretty good value. His targets per route rate was 25% last year. Now you have no Lazard. So this could be like another just massive. Like I'm sure he's not gonna just house every freaking catch, for a touchdown.
Right.
But just his target rate was immaculate. And you kind of mentioned it. There's a lot of young guys here. I think Dobbs has some breakout potential too. He was 21% targets per route, which is not bad. He just kind of got squeezed once Watson broke out and he got hurt. But LaFleur's been talking him up. Love's been spending a lot of offseason time with him, so I think he'll be the clear number 2 wide receiver 61. There's probably a little bit of value here because beyond that, Jaden Reed's going at wide receiver 80, but he's more of like a gadget guy. Could start in the slot. And then the tight end is just, you got Musgrave, who's a second rounder. Could have maybe had some like Kincaid like buzz, but missed all last year with a knee. And then you have Kraft also. So it's just so tight ends, usually don't pan out that quickly. So I feel like it's Watts. Watts is going to be a massive target hog, and then Dobbs is probably going to be a clear second, and probably Aaron Jones third, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how else that's going to go. Any thoughts on any of the young guys? Reed is 80 at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Musgrave 34 at tight end, and Kraft 46.
Yeah. So I think if Christian Watson stays healthy, he will be his ADP. So that's really the only question you have to ask when you take him. I think he's QB proof. He caught that 63-yard touchdown from Jordan Love down the stretch last season. So I think he can still provide wide receiver 2 numbers without Aaron Rodgers. Dobbs, I think, is interesting. You know, he had a ton of momentum heading into last season as the potential Devontae Adams replacement, and he was really good in weeks 1 through 4. He's the wide receiver 36, but like you said, just due to the emergence of Christian Watson, due to injuries to Dobbs, he faded out towards the end. But they lost Lazard and Cobb, so I think he should be the number 2 target. So I like him at ADP. I think Jaden Reed is very interesting. You know, he's second round pick out of Michigan State. Talented return guy. He might need to, you know, work on route running, but I mean, he could get thrown in the fire. They don't really have much going on. So I do like his upside. He kind of reminds me of a slower Tyreek Hill. If you watch his film, like he's not going to really burn guys, but he does have some really good moves. You know, he's a good returner. So he could flash in the slot, and he has this is the best landing spot I could imagine for him. So I think he's worth a flyer at wide receiver 80. And I actually do like Luke Musgrave. He's going at tight end 34. He's like a cheaper version of Sam Laporta, I would say. Second round pick out of Oregon State. One of the better pass catching tight ends from this class. He's not some possession tight end either. He has some serious speed. So he can, you know, he's one of those guys like a Chigga where we're projecting his average catch like 12.5 or something. He reminds me of my comp for him as Greg Dulcich. Very similar type of player. So I think he could hit in year 1. Their depth chart at tight end is pretty weak. So I would not be shocked if he's the week 1 starter. So I like his ADP at tight end 34. If you miss out on Sam Laporta, you get a similar type of tight end in a similar situation, albeit not as good of an offense, in Luke Musgrave. So I think he's pretty sneaky later in drafts.
Yeah, he could be like an athletic starting, like almost like a Gesicki or somebody, like an athletic starting
absolutely.
tight end. But it's still something to monitor, obviously, because they also got Tucker Kraft around later. And, you know, there's still DeGuara there, I believe. And who else is there? Tyler Davis, who they never quit. But they never quit on him. But yeah, no, I agree. I think Musgrave, if he's like, he could be a starter and he's going like outside the top 32. So that is something to kind of monitor. Still makes more sense in best ball. Obviously, I don't think even if he does start, it's going to be very consistent.
Exactly.
And then the backfield, Jones is RB17, Dillon is RB33. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, this is tricky. I mean, Aaron Jones, I don't love him at RB17, but that's really where the running back position gets dicey, where you can complain about everybody. But last year it was pretty even committee with Dillon. You know, Jones' routes run rate were 52%. Dillon was up to 41%. Like that, it was surprising to see Dillon as involved in the passing game. Jones had 48% of the rushing attempts. Dillon 41%. So that's not ideal in an offense that could take a step back under Jordan Love. Plus, Love will be more. He's not like Justin Fields type, but he is going to scramble more than Aaron Rodgers. So that could hurt Aaron Jones' check down numbers. But like you said, Jones could be the number 3 target in this offense. I just don't like his touchdown upside in the Jordan Love era. So RB17 seems like a fair price, but I probably won't be going on my way to get him here.
Yeah, it's a fair price. I think, you know, he's averaged 16 touches for 89 yards per game last year. His touchdown rate has been kind of decreasing on the rushing side, but he did catch 5 receiving touchdowns. So I think his upside is going to lie in the passing game. He was the RB. He was like an RB1 in last season, and he's never been lower than 17 in the last 5 years. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers was there, but yeah, I think he's kind of like, he's not a sexy pick anymore, but he's still probably going to be more efficient than Dillon and still see more touches than Dillon. It's just the consistency with this offense. You know, the touchdowns probably won't be there. So some weeks Aaron Jones will have like 12 touches for like 55 yards, and that's it.
And he'll be turning 29 this year.
Yeah, so, although no real signs of a slowdown. To be fair.
But it can happen pretty fast, and he's definitely, you know, probably going to be in the decline phase at 29. So
yeah, Dillon's interestingly enough been declining. His yards after contact 3.6 his first year, 3.2 his second year, 2.9 his third. So it's kind of weird. But any thoughts on Dillon at 33? Like, do you think? I mean, if you're thinking Jones is declining, do you like Dillon, or you think he's kind of also going to be just hurt by this offense?
I think he probably he's going to be hurt by the fact that they're going to have less positive game scripts potentially. So I don't like Dylan either. Although he does see a pretty big workload for someone being drafted in the RB 30 to 35 range.
Yeah, 13
again,
touches a game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So usually those are guys that they probably need an injury to provide flex value. He can. And then obviously he has RB2 upside if Jones were to miss time. So normally I'm a big Dylan guy, but that was with Aaron Rodgers, the future Hall of Fame quarterback under center. So I think just with Jordan Love there, Dylan's the player specifically. I think it might hurt the most. I'm not getting a bunch of Dylan at RB 33 even.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of like what Aaron Rodgers, what they're losing in terms if you're comparing it to last year is intangible based, because like the actual numbers for Rodgers last year, 6.8 yards an attempt, 217 passing yards a game, 26 touchdowns, which that's fairly good, but kind of more average than good. But like that, they're really losing, like they're actually losing in many metrics a below average quarterback from last year. I mean, so like that is the one thing that's interesting. Like can Love get to 60.8 yards per attempt with, mid-20s touchdowns in 17 games? Maybe.
I think a lot of this, I take your point. I think a lot of this is losing Devontae Adams. I think that was such a big loss.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't think Jones or Dylan is sexy, but I think they're fine. Like I don't think they're gonna lose your league. I could be, exactly. Especially because with less other skill talent, and such young and so much youth everywhere, I think it's going to be a pretty running back centric offense too. So, as much as it can be, given the game scripts. But all right, who do you like for sleepers or undervalued guys on the Packers?
Just based on ADP, I think Luke Musgrave as the tight end 34. This is best ball only. I think if you have a Jordan Love, Christian Watson, Luke Musgrave stack, I think that makes a ton of sense. But he's a good backup plan if Sam Laporta gets drafted in the tight end 24 range. I think Musgrave has similar upside in this offense. And I love the talent too. So I got to go with Musgrave.
Yeah, I like that call. I'm going Christian Watson first and foremost. I think he could smash wide receiver 27. He could be a guy that gets targeted, on 30% of his routes this year. And I also think Romeo Doubs can beat his ADP at outside the top 60, because I think this could just be a very kind of what do you call it? When it's just concentrated offense, with Watson as a number one. I think Doubs is kind of has a leg up on everyone else. It's kind of that clear number two, especially with no real threat at tight end. And in terms of like a massive target hog or anything like that. So Watson is number one. Doubs as well, I think, has some value. What about overvalued guys or busts?
I don't think anybody's being drafted too high. I think the one player I'm going to have less of for sure this year is AJ Dillon. Usually I have a ton of him. I just think Aaron Jones still being there, the fact that their win total is 7.5, they're going to have less positive game scripts. I think Dillon gets the biggest hit, but he'll cash in at this ADP if Aaron Jones gets hurt, so I won't have 0 shares. But I think of all the Packer players, I think AJ Dillon's probably the most likely to bust.
Yeah, I don't have anyone, honestly. I think this is a team especially once we get clarity on, who's getting those, that wide receiver 3 role, who's getting that starting tight end role. I think these guys are going to be undervalued. I mean, you wouldn't say any of the defenses in this division are great.
True.
You played what did you finish? Third last year? Third place? So you're playing at a third place schedule. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to. There's mostly upside at all these ADPs, in my opinion. I see what you're saying with Dylan, but I don't see Dylan falling at like outside the top 40 either. So it's look,
I'm going to have some Dylan shares. I think there's a time and a place for that. But like I said, just all of them are either at value or showing a ton of value. Just Dylan, he's in line. So that's what I'm saying is like, this is a good team to invest in. And best ball, you can get some really cheap stacks. So that's kind of how you go. Just go all in by stacking them.
Yeah. I think this is definitely a team we got to monitor because I think there'll be some value here. All right, that is going to wrap it. If you want to hear us talking about the AFC North, that episode has already dropped, as have our AFC and NFC East episodes, all right here on the Fantasy Flex feed. Stay tuned next week. We will preview the AFC South. That will drop Wednesday, and then the NFC South will be out Friday. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker, me at Chris Raybon. You can find us at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.